Catastrophize means to imagine the worst possible outcome of an action or event, and to think about a situation or event as being a catastrophe or having a potentially catastrophic outcome. Imagine a tornado is coming your way. What goes through your mind? Some people will realize danger and get to safety quickly, while some people will not be able to stop thinking about dying. Both people are frightened, but which one is catastrophizing? We know that when we think happy and good thoughts, it can help us actually feel happy. And studies show it decreases stress. But in the literature, some researchers make people with fibromyalgia out to be huge catastrophizers of our pain and other symptoms. Sure, we get distressed, but I think sometimes we're not given a voice to express what's happening to us, even with our doctors, because if we do, we might be considered a catastrophizer. So I'd like to talk about that. I've listened to what people state in online support groups, and it can come out as catastrophic. It breaks my heart to listen, and honestly, sometimes I've had to avoid those conversations because they remind me of a time when I was also having a really hard time. I'm human. I commend the mods in support groups for being able to assist people in those situations. It's difficult, I'm sure, because in every way, they understand what they're going through. But that person who is talking about their trauma is also re-experiencing it. Pain catastrophizing is real, but for some researchers to talk about it like it can be fixed immediately or that they can dampen their enthusiasm about expressing their pain, and that people with fibromyalgia are constantly negative, that's my issue. I mean, some researchers even title their journal articles with demeaning messages about people with fibromyalgia and catastrophizing. I mean, I get it. Fibromyalgia is an easy subject for them. But in one study, people with RA, rheumatoid arthritis, and OA, osteoarthritis, had higher pain severity as it relates to catastrophizing. There are higher pain tender points in depression in people with fibro who catastrophize. But which one comes first? I mean, it's simply a correlation, so we don't know. But catastrophizing occurs in everyone. Check. Yes. Many people with other illnesses catastrophize. Check. The problem may be that some researchers still don't believe that our disease is real. But there are researchers who are kind and understanding. Let me quote a few. As a third of patients with fibromyalgia had bad experiences with healthcare, especially younger patients, knowledge about fibromyalgia needs to be increased, and the patients should be taken seriously and treated respectfully, as well as given adequate support. That was Rebecca Hasselroth et al. These researchers express that skepticism, ignorance, and disregard of individuals with fibromyalgia and their symptoms display a lack of empathy by their healthcare professionals. Here's another quote. Healthcare services should offer greater support for these patients in the form of specific resources such as fibromyalgia clinics and health professionals with increased awareness of the disease. That was Erica Briones Vosmediano, and I messed that up at all. The purpose of this article was to bring awareness to the difficulties of patients, to get their physicians to take them seriously. Often patients felt like they were just complaining women and that fibro was not considered as a disease by their physicians. Now, I'm not trying to point fingers at all physicians. There are some very empathetic and kind doctors out there who will listen to you. But is it possible that the catastrophizing of individuals with fibro are a direct relationship to their experience at the doctor's office with their family or their friends? Maybe they're brushed off as a catastrophizer. When I was researching fibromyalgia studies while working on my Ph.D., I was astonished by how many articles were about the catastrophizing of our pain and experience with fibro. And they often wrote, catastrophizing is common in FM. It is true, and anyone can attest to it, that catastrophizing can interfere with our ability to get better. It can also affect the people around us when we might come across as complaining, hence why support groups are so important to our learning and healing process. It is the why people with fibro catastrophize in the first place that I was interested in, and other researchers as well. In WebMD, a researcher and MD, Roland Stodd, stated, due to the fact that very few physical abnormalities are present in these patients, bias has occurred. Many people think mood abnormalities play a major role. Gizecki's group, their other researchers, looked at brain responses to painful stimuli and then checked to see if there was any difference between depressed and non-depressed fibromyalgia patients. They showed the activation on areas of the brain related to pain were not different in patients with and without depression. So depression doesn't cause fibromyalgia. That's important because catastrophizing is often suggested that it's due to fibro not being a disease. Well, we know that isn't true, and now there's proof. Furthermore, to be in pain can be depressing. I have read so many posts and support groups that should have very much been handled by their doctor, their physician. If their doctor would take the time to answer those questions and allow the patient to express how they're feeling and provide empathy so that when the patient walks out of the doctor's office, they'll have a feeling of being supported and cared about. I mean, that doesn't mean we should go in and spend an hour of their time. But if you have questions, I think they should be answered. And maybe just take a few in with each appointment. Most posts in support groups involve asking a lot of questions because people want to understand what's happening to their bodies. I'm still learning. I want to know what information is out there. Most people with any illness will begin to catastrophize if they don't understand their outcome because of the uncertainty they feel. Imagine being sent to multiple doctors and it takes years to get a diagnosis. This is the case for many people with fibro. Once they get that diagnosis, they often feel relieved because they have validation. But it doesn't end there. There are so many questions that they want answered and they need answered. But I'll talk more about this in a moment. So what can we do? I believe wholeheartedly that it's important for us to be our own advocate. Learn as much as you can. Listen to those who have had fibro for a long time. What do they do to get to a place of acceptance and coping? Because when we do, we'll find ourselves getting better. There will be less catastrophizing and more acceptance and moving forward. There's a great article that I have linked below that explains how much we don't know. And there's a funny joke in there. Well, it was funny to me. And it goes something like this. A demon enters a person's body who has fibro and says, I've made a huge mistake. Everything hurts. As far as somatization is concerned, fibromyalgia is not in your head. The doctors who look for an explanation for the symptoms of fibro are simply not informed. Once upon a time, ulcerative colitis, menopause, and asthma were once misunderstood. So don't let it get to you. Hold your head high. You're enough. And look towards what you can do right now. As with any illness, your life changes. Accept that. It's a condition of unexplained pattern of symptoms. Accept that. If we don't accept it, it makes us feel crazy. Pain isn't always the thing that causes us distress. Sometimes there are other symptoms and just life. Many years ago, I handed my illness over to God. I don't need to carry that burden any longer. I gave it to him, and he carries it for me. I hope you learned something today. I send you gentle hugs and support. Love you. Imagine or what the heavens? I'm having trouble talking today. I didn't write that.